Have you ever wondered why no matter how hard you try, it still never feels enough? Why even your biggest victories taste like failure in disguise? That quiet voice in your head that says, "You could have done better." It never rests. You chase approval, perfection, and love, yet the emptiness stays. Because deep down, your worth has been tied to performance, not existence. This is not weakness. It's a psychological conditioning, built layer by layer from years of silent comparison, unmet expectations, and invisible wounds. In this breakdown, we uncover why your mind refuses to let you feel enough, and how to finally silence that voice that keeps stealing your peace. We often think of self-rejection as a conscious choice, as if one day we simply decided to believe we weren't good enough. But the truth is, this belief begins long before we even have the words to describe it. It's not born out of logic, but from emotional experience. It starts when love becomes conditional, when the warmth you crave comes only after achievement, obedience, or silence. Slowly, your mind learns that worth must be earned, that you are not inherently enough just as you are. This belief doesn't scream, it whispers. It hides behind perfectionism, people-pleasing, and the quiet fear of being seen too deeply. As children, we absorb everything like mirrors, not just words but tone, silence, and facial expressions. If affection came only when you were good, or if mistakes led to distance or anger, your brain linked love with performance. That small child inside you began to reject any part of themselves that could risk disapproval. The loud, creative, emotional, or vulnerable sides of you were pushed down, not because you wanted to, but because it felt safer to be smaller than to be unloved. And so, without realizing it, you built an inner wall between who you are and who you're supposed to be. That wall becomes thicker with time, you grow older, and the voices that once surrounded you turn into the ones inside your mind. You start to measure your value through achievement, validation, or comparison. And when those are missing, emptiness returns. You might tell yourself you're lazy, ungrateful, or not trying hard enough, but what you're really doing is repeating a learned language, the language of self-rejection. It's the echo of every moment you were made to feel like love had to be earned. The most painful part is that you don't even realize it's happening. You believe you're striving for growth, but what you're actually doing is trying to fix a version of yourself that was never broken. Healing begins when you recognize that the voice saying, "You're not enough," was never yours to begin with. It was planted there. And it can be unlearned. The moment you stop chasing worth and start remembering it, that's when you begin to come home to yourself. When love becomes a performance, it stops being love. It becomes a transaction. Many people grow up believing that affection is something they must earn, not something they simply deserve. You start to notice patterns early on. Smiles come when you achieve, approval comes when you obey, and attention comes when you suppress your needs. Slowly, love becomes less about being seen and more about being impressive. You learn to perform, to shape yourself into what others want, to anticipate moods, and to please before being asked. It feels normal, even necessary, because deep down, you believe that without the performance, you might not be loved at all. This conditioning can follow you into adulthood like a shadow. You might find yourself constantly trying to prove your value, in relationships, at work, even in your own reflection. Compliments never sink in, because your mind is already searching for the next way to earn them again. You start defining your worth through doing rather than being. Every act of kindness becomes an unconscious test. Will this make them stay? Every achievement becomes a question. Am I enough now? You don't realize it, but your entire emotional world becomes a stage. One where you're always performing, but never truly seen. What's tragic is that this pattern often comes from love itself. From parents or caregivers who didn't know how to give unconditional acceptance because they never received it themselves. They might have believed they were teaching discipline or motivation, not realizing they were teaching conditional worth. As a child, you didn't interpret it as, "They're struggling to show love." You internalized it as, I must be better to deserve love. That belief doesn't fade, it matures with you, hiding behind your achievements, your relationships, and your constant self-criticism. True healing begins when you start to unlearn this performance, when you realize that you don't need to keep proving yourself to earn connection, that you are allowed to exist, flawed, quiet, uncertain, and still be worthy of love. Love that is not bought with perfection or performance, but received simply because you are. When that truth finally lands, the performance ends, and for the first time, you meet yourself. Not the version you created to be loved, but the one that always deserved it. The inner critic is one of the most powerful voices in the human mind, yet it was never truly yours. It's an echo, a reflection of the voices you once heard, the judgments you once feared, and the standards that were imposed upon you long before you understood what they meant. This voice hides behind the illusion of self-improvement, whispering that it's only pushing you to be better. But in truth, it's the leftover language of shame. It doesn't guide you, it punishes you, and what makes it so destructive is how convincing it sounds, how familiar it feels, as if it's part of your very identity. In childhood, the mind absorbs messages without filters. Every correction, every sigh of disappointment, every withheld smile becomes data that shapes your self-perception. When those around you expressed love inconsistently, when affection depended on your behavior, your brain learned to anticipate criticism before it even came. Over time, that external judgment became internalized. You didn't need others to scold you anymore, you learned to do it yourself. The inner critic was born as a form of protection, a way to avoid rejection by controlling yourself first. If you could be perfect, you thought, you could be safe. But safety built on self-attack is a cage. The inner critic convinces you that it's helping, yet it drains your confidence, creativity, and sense of self. It compares, it doubts, it rewrites every accomplishment into something not quite enough. Even moments of rest feel guilty, because the voice insists you should be doing more. It becomes the filter through which you interpret the world. No praise feels genuine, no success feels complete. And the worst part is, you believe it's the truth, not realizing that you're reliving someone else's script. To silence the inner critic, you must first recognize it for what it is. An inherited voice of doubt, not your authentic one. That voice might sound like a parent, a teacher, or a culture that demanded too much and gave too little. When you start to separate your own awareness from that borrowed judgment, you reclaim power. Healing doesn't mean erasing the voice. It means learning to talk back. It means replacing the question, what's wrong with me? With, who taught me to think that way? That's when the real voice, the one that's been buried beneath the noise, finally begins to speak. Validation feels like oxygen because, for many of us, it was the first form of safety we ever knew. From a young age, attention and approval weren't just pleasant. They were necessary. They told us we were seen, accepted, and allowed to exist without threat. When love or acceptance came only after doing something right, the brain wired itself to chase validation the same way it chases survival. That need never really fades, it just matures into subtler forms. The constant checking, the need to be liked, the fear of being misunderstood. Validation becomes the invisible currency of worth. In psychological terms, this craving is a conditioned emotional response. Every compliment releases a small dose of dopamine, reinforcing the behavior that earned it. Over time, we start building our identity around external approval. You stop asking, who am I? And start asking, who do they want me to be? Social media amplifies this cycle. Likes, views, and comments become modern-day mirrors, reflecting not who we are, but who we need to appear to be. Yet, no matter how much validation you collect, it's never enough, because the wound it's trying to fill isn't about recognition. It's about the absence of unconditional acceptance. When validation becomes your oxygen, its absence feels like suffocation. Silence from others feels like rejection. Neutrality feels like judgment. You begin to overanalyze texts, tone, or expressions, searching for reassurance that you still matter. Your nervous system becomes addicted to the highs of approval and the lows of perceived neglect. It's not vanity, it's survival instinct misplaced. Deep down, your mind is still trying to earn a sense of safety that should have been freely given. The healing begins when you start to rewire your source of validation, when you shift from, I need them to see me, to, I can see myself. That means learning to notice your worth before it's mirrored back to you, to recognize your effort even when no one applauds it, to sit with discomfort instead of chasing approval. True validation isn't external, it's internal permission to exist without proving anything. When you begin to validate your own emotions, your own progress, and your own humanity, the external world loses its control. You no longer breathe validation like oxygen, you breathe freedom. Perfectionism often disguises itself as ambition, but beneath its polished surface lies a deep wound, the fear of not being enough. It's not about wanting to be excellent, it's about needing to be flawless to feel worthy. Perfectionism is the mask unworthiness wears to survive. It convinces you that if you can just do everything right, you'll finally earn the love, safety, or respect that always felt out of reach. Every goal becomes a test, every mistake a threat. You live in constant tension, never satisfied, never at peace, because the standards you chase aren't designed to be met. They're designed to keep you running. Psychologically, perfectionism is a coping mechanism. It emerges when a child learns that mistakes lead to disapproval, or that love is conditional on performance. To protect themselves, they start striving for control. If they can be perfect, they can avoid rejection. Over time, this turns into an internal rule: I must not fail. But life doesn't work that way. Imperfection is inevitable. So every human moment of weakness or error becomes proof of personal failure. The perfectionist mind doesn't allow rest, because rest feels like falling behind. It doesn't allow joy, because joy feels undeserved until everything is done. The cruel part is that perfectionism rarely brings happiness. Even when you achieve something extraordinary, your mind immediately moves the finish line. What should feel like success feels like relief. Relief that you didn't fail. That's not living, that's surviving under pressure. The inner critic praises you for productivity, but punishes you for being human. You may appear disciplined, driven, or confident on the outside, but inside, you're exhausted, running from the quiet fear that you'll never measure up. Healing perfectionism isn't about lowering standards, it's about redefining worth. It's realizing that making mistakes doesn't make you unworthy, it makes you real. It's learning to see progress as more valuable than flawlessness, and authenticity as more powerful than approval. The antidote to perfectionism is compassion, not laziness, but gentleness toward yourself when you fall short. When you start replacing self-criticism with curiosity, your worth stops depending on achievement. You begin to understand that perfection isn't the path to love, it's the barrier keeping you from feeling it. And when that illusion finally breaks, peace begins to take its place. Comparison is one of the most silent destroyers of self-worth. It creeps in without warning, while scrolling through social media, hearing about someone else's success, or simply looking at someone who seems more confident, more loved, more whole. The human brain is wired to compare. It's how we once measured safety and belonging in a tribe. But in today's world, this instinct turns into a psychological trap. You begin to define your value by where you stand in relation to others, not by who you truly are. Every moment becomes a silent competition, and no matter how much you do, someone always seems ahead. This constant comparison breeds emotional burnout. You start living in a cycle of striving and depletion, chasing goals that aren't even yours, trying to match standards that were never meant for you. Each scroll, each glance, becomes a reminder that you're behind. And the brain interprets that as danger. The body responds with anxiety, self-doubt, and fatigue. You start losing touch with your own rhythm because you're dancing to someone else's music. The more you compare, the more disconnected you become from yourself. You stop asking, "What do I truly want?" and start asking, "What will make me seem enough?" At its core, comparison is a form of self-abandonment. You trade your individuality for approval. You look outward for validation that can only be found inward. It doesn't just drain your energy, it erodes your identity. And what's worse is that the people you compare yourself to are often wearing their own masks, hiding the same insecurities you carry. Everyone is fighting a silent battle against not feeling enough, and comparison keeps that wound open. The healing begins when you reclaim your attention. When you stop measuring your progress through someone else's highlight reel and start honoring your own journey. That means learning to pause when jealousy or insecurity arises, not to shame yourself, but to ask what that emotion is trying to tell you. Usually, It's pointing towards something you value, but haven't allowed yourself to pursue freely. When you shift your focus from comparison to connection, from competition to authenticity, the burnout begins to fade. You rediscover the truth that growth is not a race. It's a return to yourself, and that's where peace begins to grow. Rewriting the story of self-worth begins with recognizing that the one you've been living wasn't written by you. It was written by the people who shaped your early world, their expectations, their fears, their definitions of value. Somewhere along the way, you inherited a script that told you love must be earned, that worth must be proven, that perfection equals safety. You've repeated that story for so long that it began to feel like truth. But it isn't truth, it's conditioning. The mind clings to it because it's familiar, even when it hurts. To rewrite that story, you have to question every line you were taught about what makes you enough. The process isn't easy, it feels uncomfortable, because you're confronting beliefs that have guided your entire identity. When you start to challenge those inner narratives, I'm not enough, I'm too much, I have to earn love, your brain resists. It fears the unknown. Yet this discomfort is proof that change is happening. Healing is not about replacing pain with positivity. It's about meeting your old pain with truth and compassion. It's about becoming aware of how much of your self-talk is inherited, not chosen. Once you see it, you gain the power to choose differently. Rewriting your self-worth also means learning to define success and love on your own terms. Maybe worth isn't about how productive you are, but how present you can be. Maybe love isn't something to earn, but something you allow yourself to receive without performance. The moment you stop chasing external approval and start building internal safety, everything begins to shift. You no longer need to play roles or meet impossible standards. You begin to show up as you are, raw, imperfect, real, and that authenticity attracts the kind of peace that performance never could. This transformation doesn't happen overnight. It's a slow, intentional rewriting, a daily practice of choosing truth over old stories. Every time you speak to yourself with kindness, instead of criticism, you edit the script. Every time you rest without guilt, or celebrate progress instead of perfection, you reclaim a piece of your narrative. Over time, the story that once said, "I'm not enough," evolves into one that says, "I always was." And that's not just healing, that's liberation. Becoming enough isn't something you achieve, it's something you remember. It's the quiet realization that there was never anything missing from you to begin with. The idea of not being enough is a story the world taught you, not a truth you were born with. From childhood, you were made to believe that love, acceptance, and belonging depended on how well you performed or behaved. Over time, this belief shaped your entire sense of self. You began to measure your worth by how others saw you, by what you accomplished, or by how well you hid your flaws. But being enough has never been about perfection. It's about authenticity. It's the act of existing without needing to justify your place in the world. When you begin to embrace the truth, everything starts to shift. You no longer chase love that requires you to shrink or pretend. You stop apologizing for existing in your full depth, your emotions, your silence, your complexity. The journey to feeling enough isn't about gaining something new. It's about shedding everything false. It's about removing the masks you wore to feel accepted and realizing that the real you, the one underneath all the trying, is already worthy of love and peace. The world may still demand more, but your soul doesn't. Your soul only wants honesty. This process often begins in small moments. When you set a boundary without guilt, when you rest without needing to earn it, when you let yourself feel joy without questioning if you deserve it. Each of these moments rewires your mind, teaching it that safety and worth don't come from external validation, they come from self-acceptance. And that acceptance doesn't mean you stop growing, it means your growth finally becomes gentle. It becomes a choice, not a punishment. Being enough is the moment you stop running from yourself. It's when you realize that the person you've been searching for in others, the one who finally sees you, believes in you, and stays, has always been within you. The voice that once said, "You're not enough," grows quieter as you start to speak to yourself differently. And in that silence, you discover something sacred: peace. The kind that doesn't depend on who approves of you, but on the simple truth that you already are, and always were, enough. At some point, You realize that the endless chase for worth is a race with no finish line. You've spent years trying to become what others could love, forgetting that love was never something to win, it was something to remember. All the striving, the perfection, the comparisons, the quiet pain of never feeling enough. It all leads to one truth: you were never broken. You were only taught to see yourself through a cracked mirror. The real healing begins when you stop running from the parts of you that feel unworthy and start listening to them instead. When you hold your pain not as proof of failure, but as evidence of how deeply you've tried to survive, you begin to see that being enough isn't a reward for getting everything right. It's your natural state, the one that existed long before the world told you otherwise. So pause, breathe. You don't have to earn your place here. You don't have to keep proving that you deserve to exist. The truth is, you already do. The moment you stop searching for validation in the eyes of others and begin to see yourself clearly, the illusion shatters. What's left isn't emptiness, it's freedom. The kind that comes when you finally understand that there's nothing left to fix, only everything left to embrace. You are enough. You always have been. And the moment you finally believe that, not just with your mind, but with your whole heart, that's when your story truly begins.